So I'm going to please carry on. What a lovely thing to say. We have
Yes, since the last since we did the group last week, yeah, I've definitely felt, as you say, there's been a shift in I think my perception of situations, and how I would have normally reacted, to have just, I don't know, just a bit more open, a bit calmer, I guess, without
yeah.
being so stressed or immediately thinking it's a negative rather than thinking actually no, I can deal with it, or whatever. So yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I think it's so great because it is about um, it's about a framework and a new paradigm, and actually, um, as you say, that's the thing is it just changes that sort of the immediate response, immediate reaction, and you just take that moment to kind of to realize that perhaps our reaction is not really truthful,
Mm,
and to sort of and to kind of go to slow down a little bit, and also to realize that there's more than one thing going on really, and I love that as well. That's great. So what we're going to do, we're going to crack on because unfortunately Katie's had a bit of a plumbing incident, so she may not be joining us this evening, and I know that Lisa has already covered this, and as I said, I think there might be an issue with time differences as well. So um, but really, so what I wanted to do is just first of all just say thank you again for coming in, and to recap a little bit on what we did in the last session. So what we did already is we've covered those 5 types of fear of success, which you can use, in your own life, with your communities, with your clients. And the thing is, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your own practice is, that is something you can use to just give you that extra edge or whatever you want to call it, a different tool, if you like.
mm,
And then when we looked at the solutions, again, what we could see is there were so many different kinds of solution, you know, and again, you can see how many you can create and how many you can find. So it gives you kind of an almost limitless toolbox for how we approach fear of success. So what we're going to do in this section is I'm going to take you through the 7 practical trainings that I've developed. Now, basically, you've done all the hard work. Your fear of success instructors already, because you've done the case studies, you've done all the hard work. In terms of these practical trainings, you don't have to really touch these at all. Okay, but if you want to, you have permission to use these and actually use these trainings with your own clients. The reason I created these was because the first book was really all about theory, everything like that. And so with these ones, it was really about saying, well, hang on, how can we make this step by step? So this is almost like the IKEA instructions. How can we do this? So it's like if you follow these step by step instructions, you absolutely will go through your fear of success. Okay. So I don't really like this term, but we could call it idiot proof, trying to make it to a point. It's so simple that we can see how to do it very, very easily. Now, you don't have to use these in order, and you don't have to use all of them. This just to me is really kind of the logical way I approach overcoming fear of success. So what I was trying to do is like breaking it down is like, how do I do this? How do I get through my fear of success? Okay. And again, there are, I think, little nuggets, little pieces in there where you can dive in and use the concepts in these trainings when you get stuck or when your clients get stuck as well. So we're going to just take you through those fairly quickly, okay? Because the whole training, these are each about 2 hours long, and they're available on Udemy for free. And then also I have the books, and these are also compiled in one big book of 7 trainings as well. So you've got all the resources there to go and look at these step by step. So I'm not teaching you each individual training, but to give you the overview of what they are and how they work, okay? So the first one is awareness. And really what we're doing in this one is looking very deeply at anything that we're holding ourselves back from. And I use a very simple exercise in this, which is very much akin to doing a mood board or a vision board or something like that. But what I tend to do is you can use magazines, you could use books, you can use the internet. I tend to use Instagram. And I actually sort of make this, sometimes this is a daily practice when I'm feeling like, what's going on here? And, what am I holding myself back from? What am I not doing that I want to be doing? And what I tend to do is just go through Instagram, just scroll through and wait until I see any picture that gives me an emotional reaction. Bless you. So for example, if you were doing your house, if you're decorating, you'd be going through to look at anything that gives you a kind of pull of, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. And quite fancy that in my house. With this training, what we're really doing is looking for the emotion that I particularly like to use with this one is jealousy. Where is there something on here that I feel jealous of? Because isn't its simplest form, jealousy is really often us saying, I want that. And so I tend to scroll through and I try and find the pictures that the one I suddenly go, oh yeah. And it's surprising sometimes, because sometimes I get jealous about things I think, but I don't want to be doing that. And then I look a bit deeper and examine it further and say, well, actually, is it that I don't want to be doing that? Or is it that I'm judging that? That I'm holding myself back from doing something because I've taught myself not to do it. I've taught myself that I don't want it, or it's something that I'm afraid of. And so I'm jealous of the people who are brave enough to go out there and do it themselves. But it doesn't have to be jealousy. It could be any other strong emotion. It's great if you feel a strong pull towards something. If it's obvious, yes, I want that. But sometimes jealousy is it's easier to see where we could say self-sabotaging or holding ourselves back. We're resenting possibly people who are doing something that we're not doing. And Michael Beckwith, I don't know if you know him, is a very interesting teacher. And he always says this thing about when we experience jealousy, and it's rather lovely. And he says, what we're looking at, we're looking with. And I always find this, a lot of the people I've worked with who are very much say, I wish I was like this. I wish I could do that. I'm not good at that. I can't do that. Very often, once they start to move forward, once they get past that, they actually realize that they have a natural affinity for whatever it is. So when I was doing dance and working that kind of thing, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm no good at that. I'm no good at fitness. I don't do this and that. When they let themselves go and they started to go down that path, all of a sudden there was a transformation and they were doing exactly what they said they couldn't do. I've often found this also in public speaking training. Those people who hide at the back and who are very quiet, when they get to a certain point, are often the people with the strongest voices, with the most to say. But they're often the people who were trained to be quiet because they naturally had a loud voice, they naturally had a lot to say. So when they were at school or with their family, they were constantly told, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And so a lot of it is about releasing anything that we've repressed and held back. And what we do with that is then we take those images and we try and look for what is it that's really pulling us? Is there something within this that we want to try or experience? Is there something that we are curious about? And that curiosity is a wonderful thing. I think a lot of times we have this idea on social media and things like that we should be certain, that we should know. And sometimes it's finding that not knowing that's so important. Do I want to do this? Is this something you know. And very often also, like with the spas, the massage, all that kind of thing, the number of people who wanted to do that but were, I couldn't possibly spend that amount of money, you know. So it's really to sit with those feelings and sit with those ideas and say, what is it, what's really going on here? Okay. And the next training is what is an action training, which is what I call the dip method. And this one is really about dipping your toe into the water. So sometimes we don't really know how we're going to feel or what we're going to feel if we do something different. If we take that activity that we had a lot of confused emotions around and we dip our toe in the water, how is it actually going to feel? Is it going to feel, wow, this is really natural and right for me? Or is it going to feel like, no, this water's really cold and I want to get back out again? This is, you know, this, we don't know. And a lot of times we're trying to figure out how we feel about something before we even get there. You know, we don't know. And in this particular training, what I do is actually a lot of safety work, you know, talking a lot about, hey, I want to try something. I don't know if it's right for me. I don't know if it's safe for me. How do I do that safely? And it's really using the analogy of dipping our toe into the sea. Because it's important with safety. So for example, living on the coast, one of the things you learn is that when people are drowned, they are the people who during storms, things like that, never plan to go in the water in the first place. They are the people who decide to go for a walk during a storm and a big wave comes up or they get knocked over. So what's really important in terms of safety is knowing, okay, am I going to take a dip or am I going to not take a dip? What do I need? So, I mean, it's as simple as saying, if I'm going to go and dip my toe in the water, I need to make sure I take a towel. I need to be able to get warm again. Even if I'm just dipping my toe, and I can tell you it's very cold down at the moment, you know, when you go down there, even just for a walk, you need to be able to get warm and stay warm. Those kind of safety things, knowing what is the point of no return. How far can I go before I can turn around and come back again? When am I committing to something and when am I staying in that dipping area? And this is all stuff you can use for yourself, working with clients. If somebody says, yes, I want to try this, I want to try that, this is important to me. What is the level I can go to that's safe? It could be, how much money do I want to spend on trying something? It could be, how much time do I want to spend? It's a very big thing when I was planning like spas and things like that. It was always like, you know, how much time have I got? Can I do a half day? Can I do a whole day? How far am I going to travel? What's my budget like? You know, or am I going to do like a home spa thing and create that for myself? So it's really looking about, how do I safely dip a toe in the water and get a little taste? Because that's what this action training is about. It's about getting a taste of something so that we know whether it's right for us or not. Okay. So going into the next training, next practical training, the third one is analysis. And what we do in this training is we sit down and we look at the feelings. So when I went out and I had a dip, how did it feel? What came up for me? And looking deeper into those emotional responses, those emotional reactions, and trying to figure out, trying to unravel what's happening in this moment. So that analysis is just taking time to reflect, to look at those feelings. And in the training, that's when I really start to talk about what we're going to talk about in the next section of this training, which is the associated disorders. So those are 4 of the most common issues, disorders that come up when we're working with fear of success, and really with any kind of transformation work, any kind of personal development work, as we're moving forward, those 4 types of issue, disorder. So with the analysis, when we're looking really deeply into that, what we're saying is, why does this make me feel this? Why does this make me feel that? And this is often, if we're working, say, in a training or a spiritual retreat, this is often the moment that we have those breakthroughs, when we've allowed that taste of something to come in. And when we feel something, because very often it's like this, we're sitting here and it's all kind of a bit square and we're all in our living rooms, this kind of thing. It's so different to when we go out and we experience something, we get that the smell, the taste, the feeling, very often one of the most powerful things that happens for us is when we go to a place, and if we go and we visit somewhere we used to live or somewhere we used to work, or or even if we go somewhere that has the same kind of smells, the same kind of feeling. So for example, if we go to the beach, we feel the feelings we had perhaps another time in our lives when we were near the beach, and things come up. And that's when we have those breakthroughs where we kind of go, actually, I don't feel this way. What I've been telling myself for years, what I've been saying about how I feel in this is not true. I actually feel quite differently. But I could only really understand that when I felt it, when I went to that place and I had that experience. And I always say it's a lot like ice cream. We can talk about ice cream, we can talk about what's in ice cream, we can talk about flavors, that kind of thing. But when we go and we taste it, everything either makes sense or it doesn't. We like it, we don't like it. It brings up our memories. It makes us realize that, yeah, maybe I love this, but I didn't like where I was. I didn't enjoy, where I went to go and have ice cream, or what was going on at that time. So the analysis is very deep work, and it's what we used to call psychotherapy. It was often called analysis, and so this is really that thing of looking into it and reflecting. So the fourth training, our practical training, is, I put this one in the middle, and as I say, there's not necessarily an order you have to work in, but this one is in the middle because I always think this is like one of the most difficult aspects of what we're doing. And this is the other people training. Okay. And one of the reasons that we don't move through our fear of success is that we may not be safe to do so. So we may not be safe to be brilliant, to be to earn more money. We might not be safe to lose weight. We might not be safe to get fit and healthy, because we have a support structure that isn't necessarily supporting us. And what very often happens when we move through and we overcome that fear of success is that we start to get backlash from people. We start to get backlash from the people who are closest to us, because they're part of the reason that we're not doing what we want to have, do, or be. Or they're just not used to us being like that. If we've been quiet, they might not be used to us being loud. They might not be used to us prioritizing our health or fitness. And I always remember this from Zumba. The thing I always used to remember is, and this was so common, is I would have two people who turned up to the class together. And one would be the friend who's like always doing fitness classes, very comfortable in that environment. And they would be dragging a friend with them. The friend that they thought, oh, you need to lose some weight. Oh, you need to do more exercise. Oh, you need to do this, And what would happen is that the friend who didn't like exercise classes would fall in love with Zumba, because it's different. I hate exercise classes, but I love Zumba. And it's different because it challenges and it's the music, all those kind of things. So this one who had been dragged along to the class, the +1 friend, would suddenly find they were in their element, and they would shine and they would love it and they would be really good at it, and they would start to lose weight, they would start to wear more, closer fitting clothes, all those kind of things. And the person who brought them invariably did not act with delight. They didn't go, oh, fantastic, I brought you to this class and now you're loving it, because it changed the dynamic. Because they saw themselves as the one that was like the rescuer, the one that I'm gonna bring my my friend who needs to get fit and healthy to a class, and probably drag them to a dozen other classes before. But this time the person had kind of gone, wow, I love this, and I'm now going to, and suddenly they're doing better than that other person. And that friendship dynamic suddenly had changed. And I always remember I went to a really great training, and one of the top instructors sat down and she started talking about the dynamics in the program. And she was saying, you have these people, like a boyfriend perhaps, who is nagging you to go out to do X, and suddenly you take to it like a duck to water. And then suddenly the comments change, and the comments start to be, where are you going? Why you got to go there every week? Why you got to wear that? Are you really going to Zumba? And jealousy starts to come in, and because there's a change in dynamic. So that's the thing with other people. When we break through our fear of success, we change the dynamic. That transformation causes change in so many ways. And also in that training, what I talk about is the situation that sadly we also have to look at when we're coaching people, we're working with people, that they may be in an abusive situation. They may be feeling controlled. And so we also, one of the things I talk about in that particular training is recognizing when we have to take action in terms of getting out of a situation. And that actually happens for a lot of people, that when things start going well, they realize that the relationship is the biggest problem in their life. And it's time to stop making excuses for somebody. And unfortunately, also, a lot of people in those kind of situations, there are other people who are saying, no, it's not that bad, just stay where you are, and, you can work it out, that kind of thing. And so it's so, I think this training is so important, other people training, for anybody who's working with other people, because very often you'll be the first person that somebody talks to, first person that somebody will open up to about how difficult they're finding their home life. And so it's one of those things that, I felt that training was so important within this, not just, it's not all, as we all know, it's not always that simple. And sometimes there's more going on underneath the surface for people. And one of the things we also have to look at when we look at other people is that sometimes our success means ending relationships. It means letting go of relationships. And when I talk about success and I talk about authentic success, it can also include things like somebody coming out as gay. And in that situation, opening up and saying, and owning who they are, can often mean losing relationships. But most of us who have ever, worked with people who have had to make big shifts in their life, it's a sad thing that a lot of the times our self-destructiveness and our self-sabotage is really just because it's very difficult to be ourselves. There's nothing wrong with being ourselves. There's nothing wrong with being gay. But sometimes when we come out, and not necessarily just as gay, but come out in other ways, we will lose friendships. We will lose family relationships. And it's something we have to be honest about. It's not, you know, I love all these sort of personal development programs and self-help things, but at the same time, it's like, unfortunately, there are going to be people around who just want us to stay the same. They don't want us to change. And, you know, as Jen knows very well, also we have other people in our lives who share our addictions. So when we make the shift and we say, you know what, I'm tired of that, I'm not doing that anymore, it means we may well have to lose those relationships, those friendships. And if we're lucky, you know, whatever it is, we often find people on the other side. So when we give something up, whether it's drinking or something else, and we move on, we may feel like we've lost those relationships. And it's really rather wonderful when people meet us on the other side of that and say, oh yes, I understand now. I've had to give that up too, and now I understand where you're coming from. And then we can kind of have we can maybe have a new relationship, which is rather wonderful. Okay, so moving on to number 5, our action training is the dunk method. So this one it's an action training. When we're going out to do something that we think or know is something that we want. But this one is different because this is doing something either because of the nature of it or because it's our choice that we cannot dip. We cannot just dip our toe in this one. This is the dunk. This is the, you know, jumping off the cliff and the leap of faith, and we've got to go out and we've got to go all in. And this training is different because there are some things we can't just dip our toe into. So for example, if somebody is possibly working on thinking about having a baby, you know, it's a dunk. You know, we can dip our toe in earlier on by saying, how does this feel? How does this feel? But once we make that decision, you know, it's an all-in situation. Similarly with things like, I'm quitting my job, you know, or it just might be something that we could do in a very slow, simple fashion, but we decide the only way I can do this is to leap all the way in. And sometimes that happens because it's a big thing and we're really scared. And the only way to do it is just to leap and take that leap. So this training is really, I mean, this is the thing, a lot of this stuff, we know it, you know it, but it's about looking at it and breaking it down into like the simplest form. So for example, if we're going to dunk, what do I need in order to dunk? So I always say, for example, when I went traveling and I'm getting on a plane, you know, when you get on a plane, you're pretty much going to go all the way there. So I have to be prepared. I have to have my rucksack. I have to have everything I need. I have to plan to take time off and those kind of things. So when we do a dunk, you know, there are different preparations, different understanding, different practice for going all in. Okay. So the number 6, the 6th training is development. Now, this one I felt was so important to do because of the way there are a lot of concepts around development and personal development and business development. And one of the things that we often do is we say we have a concept of how we're going to do something and how we're going to progress. But if we actually look closer, we can see that really we don't need to do that. We can literally go from A to Z in one go. So this training is about looking at our development from a few different angles and saying what serves us. And when I did this training, I actually filmed it in my old kitchen, and I use the analogy of food with this one, you know, because similarly we can have, say for example, if we want to do like open a restaurant, something like that, We can have everybody telling us you've got to master everything first. You've got to take a cordon bleu cookery course first. Or, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And what we can do is go back and go really simple and say, actually, no, I can do this my own way. I can do this in a very simple way. And I don't have to make it more complicated than it has to be. And one of the things about this particular training is that very often when we go out and we do trainings, we can get stuck in a trainee mode. I have to do this course, I have to do this course, I have to do this course before we start to apply it. And again, with Zumba, I saw this all the time, in that I would, I go to training and I would meet people who I'd met at a previous training. And I'd say, well, are you, what you're doing, you're teaching. Oh, no, I'm going to get this certificate. I'm going to get this certificate. And, or I really want to be doing that, but I'm just going to take another qualification. I'm just going to do another thing. And we see, I don't know about you, like, I know that in my inbox, I'm constantly being bombarded with emails about trainings and take this course and take this course and take this course, and I'm really grateful that you've come to do this course. But it's one of those things that we can get stuck in the trainee mentality, because it's so much easier to be doing that than to be standing up at the front of the class, And so we often get stuck, in terms of our development, we get stuck at a certain level, because taking that leap into the next level can feel too scary. And of course, what we can do is take that a step forward and try. And we can always come back. If we go and we go and do something and we say, you know what, I need more training. We can, but then also we come back to that training from the point of view of, actually, I understand why I need this. I understand exactly what I do need. I need to learn more about this. I need to learn more about that. But one of the things I always find is, whenever I start out to do trainings, 99% of the time when I'm teaching, I have too much material. I'm over prepared. I'm trying to squeeze too much in. Because we think, and I love Susan Jeffers in Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, because she always said, with the book, she talked about the very first time she went to teach a Feel the Fear class. And she had like a book of material to teach. And as she said, I think she basically did the introduction. When she went to teach that class, she realized she needed to slow it down and go way, way back. And that's happened to me so many times. I've turned up to teach something. I've got all the choreography, I've got all the music, I've got all of that. Guess what? The people I'm teaching are not ready for that level. What they need is me to stop and go back and teach one step 5 ways. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's have some fun with it. Don't worry about that. We'll just get on with this. That's okay. But very often as teachers, we come in with like this whole arsenal, all guns blazing. Yeah, I know. I can see the faces here. I'm like, yeah. Because we are more than enough. We have enough. But we spent so much time telling ourselves, I need more, I need more, I need more. I can't remember if it was in this training or last week I said, or somewhere else, that one of the biggest things I see when I'm working with people in publishing and they give me their manuscript to read is that they've stuck the first half of the second book in the first book. So people say, well, why isn't this book working? Because it's 1.5 books, because you've done all of this and then you're kind of trying to teach the next level in your book, when really you need to stop it here. Why? Because people are afraid that they're not delivering enough. I remember back when I first started going out for dinner, it was like the 90s, I was at university and we'd go out And I always remember as a student, it was so hard because everywhere we went, people would deliver you these plates, of food. And at the time, I don't know, it was the 90s or something, and the plate of food was so big you could never finish a meal. And I remember that was a huge struggle as a student, because I was like, I can't leave food on the plate. I'm so poor. I need to eat everything on the plate. But for the restaurant, that was their way of doing a great job. Is we don't want anyone to leave hungry. We want to put, if you go to an Italian restaurant and there's this kind of stuff, it's more than enough. So development, this particular training, a lot of it's about seeing that so much of what we're doing in terms of development is we're kind of overdeveloping. We don't need to do that. And sometimes developing is simplifying things down. Sometimes it's recognizing the gaps. Sometimes it's recognizing that we don't have to do things in what other people tell us is the right order. And it's really just having a refresh in that training. It's having a refresh of saying, yeah, but, and honestly, I was having a meeting earlier today, and it was yet another meeting where somebody was telling me I had to do things in a particular way. And I sat there thinking about it, and I thought, well, I kind of know this business, and I don't think that's true at all. I'm going to go and find out some more. But also I was sitting there thinking, yeah, but this is what I've been told my whole life. You can't go there. You can't do it this way. I always remember when I went to, I was going to Southeast Asia, and I'd just come back from traveling around Mexico and the States and Hawaii. And I did that whole Mexico, walking down the highways in Mexico and everything, wearing my mother's shoes. Because at Christmas, my other shoes had given out, and she gave me these pair of like hotter shoes. It's the ladies' comfortable shoes over here, Jen. They're mostly worn by women in their the target is really women in their 60s and 70s, but they're fantastic. And I'd always sniffed at them. She went, look, I've got this pair of shoes in the cupboard, and she gave them to me. And they're really comfortable, and they were really good grip, proper good walking shoes. And I went to go and buy a new pair of shoes because these were wearing out. And I went into this fancy outdoor shop. I went in, and they were like so sniffy about my shoes. And they're like, we're not going to go anywhere with those. I said, okay. And they said, yeah, you can't, you're going up to altitudes of 1,500 meters. You can't do that. And I went, well, I've already climbed pyramids in Mexico at 1,500 meters. And I've already hiked, this kind of stuff, and I've done this, I've done that. And they're like, no, you need this kind of shoe, you need this kind of shoe. And they're always telling me, you can't do that. You can't do it like this, and you can't do it like that. And I just go, well, I kind of already have. But we have an idea, and that's what they're salespeople, that's what they're trained to say. And they believe it. They believe it 100%. Because that's what they've been trained. But all you have to do is just go off walking in a pair of your mother's shoes, and you realize you don't need high-tech boots. You really don't. And yeah, but that's with development. It's really about looking again at like, do I need to go and do an MBA to start my own business? No. There will always be people around you telling you can't do something unless you have this. But it's about refreshing that, looking clearly, looking again, and just freeing ourselves up from those ideas. Okay. And the last one is adaptation. And the purpose behind this particular training is looking at how we have already adapted. And the reason we do that is so that we can look at how we can adapt back. And the whole purpose of Fear of Success Instructor Training, doing anything Fear of Success, is to bring you back to you, to your authentic self, to be more you. And the reason that we do that and that we need that is that we've been trained not to be us. You know how to be you. You know how to do the things you love. You know how to enjoy life. But we get taught how not to do that. And so adaptation is looking at the stages. And with this one, I really looked at the stages of the pandemic and what that did to us. So, for example, we had the crisis and the survival. And in that moment, we have to really adapt and we have to change very quickly. And for me, the thing was I had to not hug people, not touch people, not hug people. And for all of us, it was different. But for me, that kind of meant that I also went kind of a bit in on myself as well. And I think there's kind of this idea, this concept we see around that, something is going to happen, we're going to go this way, and then we're going to go back to normal. And it doesn't really happen that way because we're using so much energy to be not us, to survive the crisis. And then what normally happens when the pressure is off and we don't have, it's not such a crisis, what happens for most people is we have a collapse. And it's actually quite a healthy response. So for example, when we're dealing with something like the pandemic, and then suddenly when the pressure comes off, we start to have all those emotional responses that a lot of us have been holding in check. It's not safe for us to really react. It's not safe for us to really respond to what's going on. We go into a survival mode. And then what happens for a lot of us is that we have a collapse. Or we have a collapse because we just simply can't keep going the way that we're going. And then we go into a recovery stage when we're starting to build ourselves back up again. But it's not, we don't just wake up in the morning and like, ooh, I'm recovered. That recovery is about rebuilding ourselves, learning to be who we are again. So for example, it could be about getting comfortable being around people again. And it's so crazy. I mean, really, when we look at this adaptation and the process of it, I look at what's happened in the last few years within myself, and I find it so odd, because how do we go from this situation where we sort of squash ourselves in and make ourselves so much smaller? And I did that. And then when we have the freedom, we don't just ping back. And I see this with so many people, it's almost like we cower, like a dog, when we've been punished, it feels like we've been punished. So we don't just spring back and go, oh yes, great, let me do that, let me be that. We still have that energetic push of keeping us small. And it's hard to be around people again. It's hard to react back to being normal. And when we go back to normal, it's a new normal. And so looking at that adaptation, that particular training is one where we can really reflect on, how have I changed? Why have I changed? And how do I recover from that? Until I can get to a place where just being myself is normal again, is easy. And when I was traveling, I was really it was almost like I was doing a year of spiritual retreats. And each time I was having a breakthrough and being more me, coming back to myself. And I always remember asking myself, why is it so hard to be me? Why is it so hard just to be myself? And the answer was really that I've spent decades pretending to be someone else. I spent decades trying to be practicing not being myself. So I have to now give myself some time to practice being myself again, and to let myself be natural. Because there's still that pull of the old habits that we've learned to kind of survive in this world. And adaptation is a real deep dive into releasing ourselves from that and allowing ourselves to be happy and joyful, enjoy the things that we like, because we know how to do that. So guys, that is all the tough stuff. Well, apart from 4 more associated disorders we're going to talk about. So what we're going to do now is, does anybody have any questions about the section that we've just done? If you don't have any obvious questions, you can always, we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A in the next section. Okay. So if you like, we can just leave that there and take a little break. I have just been talking for 50 minutes straight. So we can take a short break, a little comfort break, and then we'll come back and we'll do those 4 associated disorders and then lots of Q&A. Okay? Is that all right with everyone?
How long of a break are we going to take?
10 minutes, do you want, guys?
That should be good.
Yeah, 10 minutes. It goes so quick. Yeah.
Yeah. I just have a neighbor who texted like while you were talking, who's like, I need a cup of sugar. And I'm like, we have enough time to get you over here and get a cup of sugar.
We'll pick up at 12:30 exactly.
Okay.
Okay. All right, brilliant. I'm just gonna